This is a podcast about one woman's mission to help entrepreneurs and business owners write better business books. Each week, we tackle your writing excuses, because there are excuses too, and help you beat the blank page of doom so that you can write the book that'll grow your life and your business. Now here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the 1000 Authors Show. I'm Vicky Fraser, and this week I am joined by my very good friend and awesome businesswoman, Yinka Ewuola. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me. And we literally talk every week anyway, so I'm kind of like introducing you like we never talk. We talk all the time. And it's taken me this long to get you on the podcast, and I'm so chuffed. So thank you so much for joining us, Yinka. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I am a long-time fan and I'm so excited to be here.
Yay! Okay, so can you introduce yourself and tell us what you do, who you are and what you do?
Okay, as Vicky said, I'm Yinka Ewuola. I run a couple of businesses. So I used to be a banker. Please don't hold that against me. And I then joined my mum in her business, and she runs a school food consultancy, helping schools to take control of their food provision and education and kind of join up all the thinking and to squash all of the corruption and bad practice, really taking advantage of our vulnerable kids in the system. That's for another podcast, I'm sure. But so I help her in her business. I also run my business, which is Kala Success Systems. And that's focused on supporting women in business to build a thriving and profitable business while living a fun, fab and nourishing life. And the key premise of that is to make sure that women don't have to choose between the two. As so often, it is a very stark choice that you literally have to make these dramatic life choices if you want to be successful in business, or you resign yourself to mediocre levels of particularly financial success, or because, I have children, or I have boobs. Sorry, am I allowed to say boobs on your show?
You do this podcast so often, you've heard the things that come out of that mouth.
Okay, good. Yeah. So, I have boobs, or yeah. So instead of, being a woman's amazing. So it should be the reason for your success, not the excuse for the lack of it. So Kala Success Systems helps women to thrive as, using all the superpowers that we as women have to make business and life successful simultaneously.
Awesome, including our boobs, which are awesome. So, okay, so let's dive straight into that then, because I'm not going to dwell on the kind of victimy, all of the nonsense that we get as women in business. So I want you to talk about how you work with women to help us generally be more successful and use what we've got at our disposal, and just sideline all of the bro hustle nonsense that that's thrown at us every day. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. And what I will start by saying is that it is a bro hustle world out there. It's definitely the world of business, and kind of the development of business is very male dominated. And so the messages are male dominated, and it's very much, really powerful concepts like, 10x and monomaniacal focus and massive action. And, we as women, and I say we, but I will speak to my own personal experience, and I hope it relates to the people on your podcast. I've spent hundreds probably now of thousands of pounds training, learning, doing these amazing things, getting success. There's no doubt about it. But actually what I found was that we weren't being told the full story. That these guys were out there creating these silver bullet, magic potion-esque solutions for business. But what they were failing to elucidate clearly was the fact that what they were presenting as the work of one, and most importantly, the work of one and their magic potion formula, was actually the work of not only a team, but actually the work specifically in their business and other lives, of often the women in their lives, making sure that the other aspects of their lives, their children were fed, their mothers' birthdays were remembered, their dinners were cooked, their baths were, whatever it was that I don't want to make it sound reductive. These are important things, but the fact is that there is a mental space and there is a physical space that has been granted to those men in order for them to run their businesses in that way that women often don't have. When I speak to women in business, when I work with them, they often, we have Zoom calls and, kids are flying in and out, and, it's not, kids being paraded as like little trophy children and everyone going, oh, aren't you a good dad because your kid has interrupted our Zoom. The women are like, oh, I'm really sorry, because it's a completely different interaction. They want their attention and they need to attend to them. And that, as I keep saying, is no bad thing. That if you are primary caregiver for your children, if you don't have children, but you have those, you play those roles in your family, that's brilliant and that's really important. But then when it comes to running a business, how are you meant to have that longevity of thought when every 10 minutes you have a child, particularly on lockdown, coming to interrupt you or needing or coming in and saying, mummy poo poo, like mine did the other day. So the point there was that women kept using these tools, using these tactics, getting a level of success, but they weren't getting a level of success in the business, but were having to make really strong and stark sacrifices in the other areas of their life. And I felt really strongly that actually it shouldn't have to be that way, because that absolutely wasn't how it was sold. And then I realized why it wasn't sold that way, and it's because actually it's not that way for them. Yeah. So what I then began to think about was, okay, that's not how it is for us, for those of us who us is. So what works for us? And so my focus is around habits. It's around consistency. It's around stacking small wins. It's around, I take what I call a holistic approach, and looking at what I call 7 sets. So in addition to talking about, mindset, which everybody is obsessed with because it's really important, but actually there are 6 other sets that I talk about. So I talk about heart set, talk about soul set, skill set. I talk about information set. I talk about action set. And of course I've missed one because now I'm on a podcast and I can't remember it off the top of my head. But yeah, there's another magic set. Come and find out more about my products and I'll tell you about it when I can remember it. But yeah, so it's absolutely a holistic approach. It's looking at, what's in your diary, what do your family need, what do you need, when is your you time. I'm very much about scheduling things that are non-negotiable, and the thing that is most non-negotiable is your mindset and your health set. There is no business on the planet that is worth getting sick over. And I did, I talked about going to help my mum in her business. The reason for that was because she had breast cancer. She'd just been diagnosed with breast cancer. And I made a very quick calculation, which was however many, banking bonuses I was ever going to get. I was only going to get one mum. So I, stepped out and it all kind of worked really fortuitously that I could step out and help her with her business. But, your health is most important and is just completely lost in translation in the building of a business, in lots of spheres, not to talk of the additional challenges of the fact that everyone has a draw on your time when you're the woman in your household. So my business, as I said, works a completely different way. It's not that there's no action. There's lots of little actions. I know that, in your book, available at all good bookstores, it talks about tiny little beetle steps. And I love that because ultimately it's habits. I'm a big fan of the hare and the tortoise. I'm a big fan of the bamboo and the fern. I'm a big fan of fables that talk about how very small things, talks about atomic level components building to massive success, and that's how we, in my opinion, through results of my clients, that's how we win as women, and that's how we celebrate how we are as women. We think collaboration, we think cooperation. It doesn't have to be competitive. And so it's just really focusing on the stuff that makes us awesome to make sure that we run our businesses in the best way that works for us.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, you're right. I'm a massive fan of tiny beetle steps. And I think that's one of the things that's really disingenuous about the kind of, and this is like hashtag not all men, this is the thing that's really disingenuous about a lot of the loudest voices on the internet. It's like, the whole massive action 10x thing. It's like, that's never how it happens. It's always tiny little actions that add up to big actions, and they never talk about that because it doesn't, it's not shiny and it's not glittery, it doesn't sell. And
the thing I would say is they know it too. How whenever you speak to really wise older people in the industry, they talk about, I was listening to a book today, and the guy said it took me 24 years to be an overnight success.
Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours. So they know full well that their secret sauce, the secret is that there is no source. They know full well that it isn't the full story, but that's, no one wants to buy the product which says work really hard and do lots of stuff. No, exactly. So I understand, I'm not mad at them. I'm definitely not mad at men, for anyone who's really worried about my my life, or I live in a what I call a boys' household. I have 3 little boys. I'm married to a dude as well, so I have all the love in the world for men. I just recognize and celebrate that my life is different, and I don't allow that difference to be anything but celebrated. I think I don't want to hear oh, my life is hard because I'm a woman, because my life isn't hard because I'm a woman. If my life is hard, it's because there's something I don't know. And so at the time I was really angry, and I was like raging. And the problem with that is that your message gets lost in the rage. And shouting into the void is pretty pointless. So I definitely, I celebrate everything that's different. I celebrate, the opportunity to play the role I play in my family. But then that also gives me the chance to, build a successful business, a business that's, will become, a juggernaut, pretty unstoppable. Mark my words, people. And then really, but also to change the narrative. I think more than the business being successful, it's the narrative that needs to change, because it's the narrative of constant sacrifice. I mean, even the concept of monomaniacal focus, which I love from Robin Sharma, he's the guy who coined the phrase monomaniacal that I've heard. I love the idea, and I totally buy into the fact that multitasking is a waste of so much mental space. But the fact is that I've been to enough events where, the coffee breaks are filled with, men going to get tea and coffee and women going to the toilet and calling the kids. So how monomaniacal is their focus ever, when even in the middle of the, teaching or what have you, that, there are other things going on. And the fact is that our brains don't work the same. In kind of rereading the book Inside Her Pretty Little Head, women are whole-brained anyway. So the way that our brains work at their optimum, and the way that our brains center, versus men, and that's again at a biological and a neurological level, it's completely different. And so on that basis, I think that it's really important that we find out how our brains work and what works best for us, and then we go full force on making it work best for us. I think that's how you win whatever game you play, no matter what cards you have. So,
and that's why we need people like you, because hopefully, people like me as well, who are kind of leading the way with, okay, this is stuff that's made by men for men, and it's like, they don't have the same experience as us, and I don't have the same experience as you because I don't have children. And so, we need people like you who are coming in and saying, okay, so this is the way I want to work. And it's going to be better for men as well, because I think there's a lot of men out there who would like to be, the primary caregiver, or at least 50% of it. And at the moment, society's like, well, these are the gender roles that you've been assigned. And I love the idea of just breaking all that down, because I think the world will be a better place for it. So I'm really... I
think so too. And but I also think there's an additional layer to the argument in terms of the way business is done. And in working out some of my offerings, I've come across and settled on the concept of thriving like a girl. And in speaking to people about it, people have been women are very affronted by the concept. And it's funny because they check their own prejudice and they're like, oh, it's not because, like a girl has negative connotations. But even then, it's because, they're like, oh, I'm a grown up, I'm a woman. I'm like, yes, you absolutely are. I am too. But you know what? When I was a girl, not that long ago, as you can tell. When I was a girl, you know, I was the fastest runner in school at one point. I wasn't the fastest girl in the school. I was the fastest runner in the school. I was the best goalkeeper. I was like one of the top scorers. I never worried about the size of my butt or how I looked, or does my, you know, the imposter syndrome, or I just was. There was a comfort in my skin. And that's in spite of the hilarious racist, you know, abuse that we suffered as children growing up in a very unwelcoming part of South London. But I was so comfortable in my skin. I wasn't bogged down by society's rules or goals. There was a freedom of thought and a freedom to celebrate who I was that existed when I was younger, that the world has kind of past tense, socialized out of me. And so there is a return to that authenticity of self that I find really powerful in getting women to tap into thriving like a girl, in going back to a time when you were just being you, when you were being the best of you, that you'd line up at the start line and you'd be surrounded by boys, and it never occurred to you for a second that the result was ever going to go any other way. I mean, it did help the fact that I was super tall even back then, but you know, there was never a time when I believed that you know, gender was going to make me less than, and that's the way it should be. You know, that's what we as women should think about ourselves. We, you know, and it's funny because I've been working on, you know, the different facets of it, and actually I've been really empowered and inspired by, you know, I used girl as an acronym, and you know, G, you know, goal orientated and gorgeous and glorious, and you know, I is innovative and inventive and integrity filled, and you know, R is I came up with loads like royal and you know, really focused, and L, you know, again, loyal and legacy building, and you know, I came up with all these different. I really kind of downloaded the vibe of what it means to really be a girl in that sense, and you know, it really kind of inspired me as well to think about, okay, so a lot of women lose that along the way. Some women don't, and you know, honestly, those their queen energy remains intact, and that's a beautiful thing to me. I'm glad to have my queen energy back, but I wholeheartedly say I haven't always had it. I definitely allowed the voices of the world, imposter syndrome, you know, all of those things to kind of get to me, you know, as I grew a little bit older again, you know, I'm like, I'm all right. And so, you know, I was thinking, you know, how about we stop girls having, you know, losing that? How about we try and preserve some of that? And so that kind of got me thinking of some other kind of not-for-profit ideas, mentoring ideas for young women, because I think that there is something so magical and powerful about being a girl, and just, you know, being yourself, being strong, being clear, being focused, not being bogged down by the weight that the world wants to weigh on you as a woman. So it's definitely something I'm really excited about at the moment.
I'm really excited about it too. And we're going to talk more about that in future podcasts. But let's just jump on the imposter syndrome for a bit. How have you managed to beat it? Because I know that's, you know, a lot of people who want to write a book listen to this podcast, I hope, or maybe at least 3. And the imposter syndrome, or what I call your inner dickhead, is one of the biggest obstacles, because it just gets in the way. It gets in the way of you even sitting down to start. And I know that this is something that you've struggled with a lot with your writing, which seems incredible to me, because you're such an amazing writer, and I'm going to make people go on your email list at the end of this, because I've been on your list for years, and you're such an amazing writer. And I know that I think you're finally starting to believe that you're an amazing writer, because tell us where you've had your articles featured in the last couple of weeks.
Well, I've recently been featured in Business Insider, which is incredibly exciting. I know, it's amazing. And actually, the way I got over or have kind of battled with imposter syndrome was to be really grateful for that voice. I spent years fighting it, thinking it was something else, someone else, even though it sounds like me. My imposter syndrome voice sounds like me. And so I spent a lot of time fighting it until I realized that what you resist persists. And what I wasn't paying attention to is the ideas and the noises and the information that was trying to be passed on to me. So I really kind of focused on, okay, so I'm feeling like I'm going to get found out, like they're going to find out I don't really know what I'm doing. We all know the feeling, even if we call it by different names. And then what I realized was actually that voice for me is very much centered around perfectionism. And again, it's so funny. People who aren't perfectionists think that perfectionists are crazy, and it's not the worst assessment, because quite frankly, perfectionism is really a waste of time. But at the same time, the reason why it's so possible / powerful for me, I was that kid at school that used to get 100% in things like habitually. So the problem is that in school you can get 100% in things. In life you rarely can. So it was like mind-bending to me that, I can't actually get 100% in life. Like, what the hell? Felt a bit cheated. But also, so looking at the voice and realizing that it was that voice that had driven me to excellence, that had just gone a little bit Red Bull about it, really took away the anger and the malice that I had towards that side of me. And I then began to say, okay, thank you so much for wanting me to be my best. I understand that actually you're just trying to protect me. You don't want me to be found out. You don't want me to be found out. But then also what I realize is that I am focusing on the wrong thing. I'm focusing on the wrong gap. Mm-hmm. So I'm making myself focus on the gap between where I am now and where I think I want to be. And it looks like a chasm. And that's the reason why I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so mad. But actually, the gap I should be focusing on is the gap behind me, which is the gap between where I am now and where I started. Because when I focus on that gap and I realize how much wider it is than where I'm much closer to where I want to be than where I was before, then actually everything kind of calms down. That voice says, actually, you're not an imposter. B, actually, you are someone who very much focuses on excellence. So, go and be excellent. And actually see the distance to where you want to be isn't that far away. So I think there's real power in focusing where you notice, or notice where you'll focus even. Instead of treating that voice like a foe, befriend your critic, which isn't the easiest thing, especially when the words are so harsh and you often speak to yourself the way that you would never speak to anyone else. But again, it's something I always say to my sons, like the fact that your strength of feeling about an issue isn't anyone else's problem but your own. The fact that you feel really strongly about something doesn't add to the convincing of the argument. And so, when those inner critic voices are so super harsh, it actually doesn't make the argument any more, profound or salient. And so, befriending it, saying thank you, understanding what's actually going on, and the fact that the voice is there, and that works in general, I think is really, for me, has been the most powerful thing. Because I have that voice every day. We have a bit of a conversation, because obviously I send out a daily email. Yeah. And sometimes I'm like, they're not even going to understand this. Like, they're not going to understand, or what are you talking about? Or should you say that? Or they're going to think you're crazy. I have the they're going to think you're crazy talk with myself at least every other day. And I'm like, you know what? The worst they can do is unsubscribe. That's it. That's the worst. The other worst thing they could do is probably make it public. That probably would be a little bit more shaming if it was a horrible thing to do. But actually, nothing of real magnitude is going to happen in either of those cases. So we can just keep it rolling.
Yeah. I love that. I love the idea, because I always think of having almost like two voices. So it's like I've got my inner critic who wants, like you say, who wants to protect me and wants the best for me, and then I've got my inner dickhead who is just mean. And it's kind of like finding the balance of who you're gonna listen to and how you're gonna deal with those things, so that you can move past and do the thing that you want to do. And it sounds like you've nailed it.
So I will qualify that and say I totally haven't nailed it. I plead work in progress here. But what I will also say is I will quote Sophia Bush, who's an actress and activist. One of my favourite quotes of hers is, "You're totally allowed to be both a masterpiece and work in progress at the same time." So I claim work in progress, and I will definitely say that, compared to where I was, the gap behind me, yeah, I'm for sure nailing it way more than I ever was before. So.
Yeah, we do not look back often enough at how far we've come, and it's really frustrating. It's frustrating for me, and it's frustrating for me to see my friends and my clients as well, sort of looking at us and saying, "Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough." It's like, but look how far you've come, and it's always, like you say, it's always a massive distance compared to where you think you've got to get to. So I love that reminder that you've got to take time regularly. I think once a week to just look at what you've achieved and all of the good things that have happened, because we're wired to focus on the negative. That's evolutionarily wired to focus on negative stuff because it kept us alive. So it's really important to make the space to go back and think, what have I done? What are the good things that have happened?
I think as well, because the other thing as well is when we do look back, we look back for really stupid reasons, and we look back to like obsess about stuff we can't change, which is the worst, not only use of our time, but it's just the worst idea altogether. But I think that there's something really powerful, as you said, about collecting small wins because they stack. And I think that in thinking about, making progress in something, it does make sense to really be clear about what the milestones are, because that then, if you have a line on your wall or something and you have all the different things, then you are able to knock them off and say, actually, that's done. And you're able to chart up those successes. And, sometimes the successes are, they are steps forward. Sometimes the successes, though, is just not taking a step back or not taking such a big step back. But, there's always something to celebrate. And I absolutely would encourage it, especially if you are someone who is habitually very hard on yourself. I used to think that I would I would lull myself into complacency by being kind to myself. And it's so comical for me to say that now, because I don't know if I'd know how to be complacent, but yeah, I don't know what made me think that was a viable option, but I just think that it's really powerful to lead with kindness. And a friend of mine talks about radical gentleness, which is so, I'm Nigerian, there's so many facets, so many hats that I wear that radical gentleness just doesn't fit into. But it's radical when you start being more gentle with yourself, kinder with yourself, give yourself more allowances. I find myself stricter and more on point when I am less harsh with myself. It's like, I don't know why it works so well, but it really does. I would absolutely recommend it.
Oh, I love it. I love the idea of radical gentleness. And I think we could all do that a bit more, especially because a lot of the people that I talk to who are hardest on themselves, you and me included in that, is, we would never, we treat other people with gentleness. So why don't we treat ourselves with gentleness? I was like, why do we think it's okay to speak to ourselves harshly, and why do we think that's ever going to work? Because it never works with other people. It's like, if you want somebody to do something, being harsh to them is rarely the best way to do it. So why would you get yourself to do something by being harsh?
It's so funny because I wrote yesterday on social media about my role as a coach. So I do business coaching for women in business, and I talked about saying the unsayable. And it was so ironic to me how people kept saying, constructive criticism is really important, and, giving negative feedback is really valuable. And I kept having to reiterate, it's completely the opposite. Actually, with so many of the women that I work with, it's actually saying, you're amazing for doing that really small thing. You're amazing just for being who you are, but you're even more amazing for doing that. It's rare that women are trying to pat themselves on their back for stuff that doesn't need patting on the back for. Yeah. And so it was so funny, well, at least the women I work with. So it was so funny how people kept talking about the need to deliver negative and hard advice. And I'm like, it's often completely I'm the one who says to them, and I'm not when I say this, like, stop dissing yourself, stop saying mean things about yourself, drawing attention to things that you think are imperfect when they're I didn't see it until you said it, and I say that because I do the same thing. And so it's so important. You know, those things are unsayable because it's not our culture and it's not, but actually oftentimes women need to hear that, you know, you are amazing because sentence way more than they need to hear stop patting yourself on the back because that was rubbish. It's so rare. I've had to had that conversation very, very rarely.
Yeah, and there are better ways to, it's just like, you can encourage people to do more of this thing instead of do less of that thing, and it achieves the same result, but it does it in a kind of more effective way, I think. So yeah,
absolutely. I totally agree with that, and I think that there's a real power, as you said, in moving towards more of what you want rather than focusing on what you don't want. And that again is the power of language, and why it's really important to focus on, you know, where you're going, not to focus on where you don't want to go or where you don't want to end up or what you don't want to have.
Yeah, and there's an analogy for that as well that I pull out quite a lot, and I use it in the dance and fitness training that I do, and also in the writing training as well. Is that, and when I was learning to write, I ride motorbikes. So I haven't ridden one for a while. But when I was learning to ride a motorbike, one of the first things we were taught was the motorbike will go where you look, and so if you're looking in the ditch, that's where the motorbike's going to head. And it's like, it was a lesson that really stuck with me, partly because I really did not want to ride my motorbike into a ditch, but also because I thought it's really true of life as well. If you're always focusing on the mistakes, that's the direction that you're going to go in every time. And so I love the idea of just kind of focusing on, this is what we want more of. It's like, yeah, acknowledge what you don't want, but let's focus on what we want more of, and point ourselves in that direction, and then that's the direction we're going to go in, and we don't end up in a ditch with a motorbike on top of us.
And I think you make such a powerful point, and I think it's also really important to interrogate what you think you want and what you think you don't want. Yeah. Because the other thing that I've found really powerful is about drivers. You know, what is driving you? You know, the motorbike will go where you're looking, but actually, why are you driving that motorbike in that way, in that place? You know, in that part of at all? You know, I think that's a really important conversation also to be had, because, you know, fear as a driver, pain as a driver, hurt as a driver, but, you know, all of those negative emotions, it's not that they can't use, but it absolutely is more powerful to use positive stimulus. And that I'm not one of the positivity train. I'm not one of these, you know, larks and lullabies people. Yeah. Unicorns and rainbows is not my thing. But I do think it's really important that you focus on you know, the things that you can control, the things that lift your spirits, the things that empower you. And that's the thing, you know, whenever I meet a woman or I work with a woman and I coach her, and I say to her, do what puts you at your best. If screaming and shouting at yourself in your mind gets the result you want, makes you feel fantastic, I'm not going to stop you. Knock yourself out. But if that is true, I mean, A, I'm not the professional you probably need to see, and B, refer to A. whereas actually, you know, as I said, I can't even believe I've said radical gentleness on a podcast, because the idea was so alien to me. What do you mean gentleness? Like, come on, like, rah, come on, Yinka, like. But actually, being gentle with myself gets me better results. And that's the thing. I say it quite a lot recently. The receipts don't lie. Everything, one of my real passionate drivers for everything that I do is impact. You know, people talk a lot about doing things, activity, action. I don't actually care about action as much as I care about impact. It's been one of my downfalls as an employee, because people would say things like, oh, I worked really hard. And I would literally return that with, and that's what you produced. Like, and do you feel proud of yourself that you worked hard and that was what you did? I wasn't as evolved as a person back then. But working really hard is not my problem. I don't care. I'd rather you didn't work hard and produced what you produced. But yeah, you know what I mean? People are obsessed, because we are a bums on seats culture. People are obsessed with the time that you put into things, the effort. I don't care about either of those things. I care about the impact. Once I know what the impact is, then I can backtrack and look at, you know, was this an excessive amount of effort? was this an excessive amount of time? And so to me, because I'm so passionate about impact, I've really focused on making sure I act for impact, I speak for impact, I think for impact. I don't just do stuff, I don't just say stuff. She says, having a soliloquy on a podcast. But yeah, I don't, everything has to have intent and purpose, because that's the most powerful thing we have.
You know what? It's really interesting you should say that, because I was thinking while you were talking about that there's a couple of things that a couple of things that are kind of drummed into us from, one of those from children, and one of them is from the like male dominated framework of business and stuff. And that's like, I was interested that you were like, oh, radical gentleness is not for me. And I have that same kind of pushback to that. And I think that comes from the culture of business. It's like it's okay for men to be aggressive, but it's not okay for women to be aggressive, because women are aggressive rather than ambitious, and that kind of thing. And I think that's one of those, I hadn't really thought of it in those terms before, but it's like, as soon as you said it, it was like, yeah, why are we pushing back on gentleness? Because we're told that it's somehow a weak thing to be. No, absolutely. I call total bullshit on that. It's not. You can be gentle and you can be incredibly strong. And I think the two go hand in hand. And the other side of that was coming from school. It's like you said, the bums on seats culture. It's like we're encouraged to work really, really hard, and that's how we will be successful. And it's like, look at all of the teachers and doctors and nurses who aren't millionaires. That, let's leave aside the fact that they should be paid more, because that's not what we're talking about. The hard work doesn't equate to whatever you see success being, whether that's money in the bank or free time or whatever you see success as. And I just love the fact that you brought that up, because it's really important that we talk about the impact rather than the work.
Absolutely. And actually, that's one of the things that really shackles women, because actually we're told about being hardworking. There are these adjectives that we use about motherhood, about femaledom, about womanhood. Oh, she's so amazing, she's so selfless. Don't even get me started on the stupidest word in the dictionary. What the hell is selfless? Yeah. She is in absence of self. That's what makes a good woman. She's so she puts everybody else first. That's what makes a good woman. Like, completely disregarding her own needs or doing everything at the expense of her own need. Like, no. And let me say it again for the people in the back. No, it's ridiculous. And so, yeah, there are so many shackles, that really kind of plague the female paradigm in business. And again, in one of my other programs, the Lightening the Load world of products and services that I was looking at kind of 10 key shifts. And one of them was, for example, understanding the difference between action and motion. Because motion is movement. Motion is being busy. And actually, busy is a watchword for mental laziness. Like, being occupied and doing things is one thing. Being in motion and doing stuff and always having a faff, like, really. And that's the thing. Women, I do the school run, and so I did when school was open. But oh, how are you? Like, we wear these things as badges of honor. Oh, I'm really busy. Oh, I'm really tired. Oh, I've got so much to do. What are you actually doing? What is the impact of your motion? Is it genuinely action, or is it just stuff that's filling your day? And the thing is that the point, we all get exactly the same number of hours in a week, every single week. Every one of us, me, you, Beyonce, Bill Gates, we all have the same time. We clearly don't all get paid the same. But the point is that, and clearly we don't all want the same thing from life. And I get that and I respect that. But what I won't sit by and allow to kind of continue and persist is this idea that, busyness is what we're attaining to. And, God forbid a woman like not be busy. Oh, the ladies who lounge or ladies what lunch, or whatever the backhanded insult is. Ladies of leisure. Hell yeah, I'm going to be a lady of leisure. Be a lady of leisure. I'm going to be a rich bitch. I'm going to be all of them. Like, actually, don't even get me started on women and money. But yeah, I will absolutely, I'm not ever going to be, I'm working to make sure I'm not ever busy for busy's sake. I love that it comes up twice. I'm never going to just be busy for busy. What is the point of that? Impact is impact is ultimately the driver for everything that we're doing. And so as a result of that, either we're working for impact or we are wasting our time. And it's for us to define what that impact is. It's not in business, it's not always money. There's relationship. There are so many opportunities, in teaching the boys about business and them kind of launching. We did baby business school over lockdown. And it was a real opportunity to go back to the ideas and notions of what is the purpose of a business. And money, of course, is one of them, but it's not the only one. There's so many other opportunities. I think business has the power to solve, real problems in this world, but not if we're not operating for impact. And that's the point for me. There is such a powerful place for female-led businesses because we think differently. We've seen, even through the global pandemic, the way that female leaders behave differently to male ones on a national and kind of policy level. And so there is a need, a desperate need for that different type of thinking to be applied to some of the biggest problems we face in this world. And that's why women have to be, it is an imperative that they are ultra successful in business while they still get to lead those amazing, profitable lives. It cannot be either or.
I love that. And I think that is the perfect note to end on because we have run out of time. And just going to say now that Yinka is going to come back and we're going to talk about lightening the load. We're going to talk about the book she's writing, which we didn't get a chance to talk about. And we're going to talk about women and money as well, because you're the perfect person to talk to about that. So I'm going to, as soon as we finish this, hit stop, we're going to book you in for the next podcast episode, and we're going to talk about at least two of those things, if not all three of them. So, Yinka, thank you so much. Where can people find out more about you? Where can people get on your email list? Because Yinka's daily emails are magnificent.
Okay. People can drop me an email at yinka@calasuccess.com. Or you can get me at hello at the same suffix at calasuccess.com, or you can find me on socials. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit recently. I'm also on Facebook. I'll get you to drop the links and stuff. But yeah, come and find me. I'd be really excited for you to join us.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. So it's Yinka@calasuccess.com, and you can find Yinka on LinkedIn. Your daily LinkedIn posts are so inspirational, and you've inspired me to finally get off my bum and do LinkedIn stuff, which I'm doing. But yeah, the links will be below. So Yinka, thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you as always. Pleasure listening to you, and looking forward to doing this again. And for everyone listening, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I hope you have got a few new ideas to take away and a few new ways to think about who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. As always, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please go and leave us a review on iTunes and leave us 5 stars, or however many stars you think we deserve, but 5. And we will be back same time next week. Joe will be back with me. In the meantime, happy writing, and thanks again, Yinka. Bye.
Thanks for listening. You can find links and show notes on the website at moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast, where you can also sign up for the best daily emails in the multiverse and find loads of free resources to help you write your book. We'll be back the same time next week with more tales from the book writing trenches and the latest on what the tiny sheeps have been up to.